I've been getting a lot of questions about cool season lawns and overseeding or seeding in the spring. So today I kind of wrote out a list of some of the pros and cons to doing that. And so let's talk a little bit more about that topic. So the first and absolute thing that I want to talk about is that number one, I just want to give you some encouragement. So many of you are beginners and you're just coming into this and you're kind of wondering what to do and thinking that maybe you're going to screw something up. So I was there just probably 5 years ago or so, and I was in that same position. I didn't know exactly what to do with my yard. I didn't really understand what to do, and I was a little scared that if I did some certain things, maybe I would do them wrong and maybe I could mess something up. So number one, I just wanted to give you some encouragement there to let you know that you don't need to be afraid and that no matter what happens, we can always fix these things. So two, let's talk about, again, cool season lawns and seeding in the spring. And in my opinion, what happens with seeding in the spring is it just comes down to expectations. So if you do decide to do seeding in the spring, your expectations have to match what might happen. So I want to quickly give you an example of what happened in my backyard in 2012 to kind of show you a little bit about what happens sometimes in spring seeding. So it was a bumpy, weedy mess back there when we built our house, so I decided to have a company come in, till the whole thing up, and kind of start over at that point. I didn't know anything about lawn care at all at that point, and I was just hoping to go with this company to help me out and kind of learn some things along the way. So they decided to do the tilling, then they decided to go ahead and seed. And it was getting into May, late May at that time, and I asked them, isn't this a little bit late to kind of do some seeding? I'm feeling like we're going right into the summer. I'm gonna have a very tough time keeping this grass going. They said, nope, it'll be okay. Just keep watering it during the summer and we'll be okay. Going into fall, things will improve at that point. So what I found was that basically a land of crabgrass came up. We had a drought that year. Everything was working against me. So by the time we got to fall, they had come back and sprayed the crabgrass and I still didn't have a whole lot of grass there. It just did not look good. So we seeded again in the fall, things started to improve. So eventually with all these different practices that I've been learning and implementing since I took over the yard, we have some success back there and it looks good. But going back to the spring seeding again, it comes back to your expectations, and you have to know going in that there's a possibility that things aren't going to work out that well if you do decide to spring seed, and you have to know that things can be fixed in the fall, but you have to be willing to do the work. Number two example that I want to show you where I did succeed with spring seeding was actually a video that I just got noticed that crossed over 500,000 views this week. So very cool. I have a few videos that kind of went crazy like that, and it's pretty awesome to be able to share some info with people and have the video go to such a mass audience. Here's what happened. I messed up, completely my own fault. I had some Roundup in a can, in a little hand can, and I thought I'd rinsed everything out, but maybe I let it sit in there for too long. So I don't know exactly what happened, but some of the residue was left in there, and I did some spot spraying of some normal just broadleaf weeds. But what came up in the spring was a big mess of dead grass and a bunch of large areas that I killed. So here were my choices at that point. It was spring. I could either let them go and try to prevent any crabgrass and weeds from coming into those bare areas while my bluegrass continued to fill in on its own, or I looked at it and said, I just think these areas are too big and I'm gonna have to intervene here and do something about it. So that was the process of doing that video, of repairing all those bare spots. I put bluegrass in it, which is certainly not a fast grass to grow in, and I succeeded that year in keeping it alive, keeping it watered during the summer, and everything looked pretty good that whole year, and it didn't die off. So there's an example of where I did succeed compared to my complete renovation. So let's talk about some of the concerns you might have with seeding in the spring. Number one, in my opinion, would be you're not going to be able to use the traditional pre-emergence. So if you've had crabgrass in your yard last year, or if you just moved in and you're not really sure, you're probably going to want to try to prevent that crabgrass from coming in this year. And so if you're going to do spring seeding, then the pre-emergent is also going to prevent that seed from coming in. So you can't use both of those together. Now there's a specific product called Tenacity that you can use when you're doing seeding. I used it last year on my renovation area. It worked very well, but it only lasts about max 4 weeks or so. You can do another application at that point, but again, you have to kind of make that decision there whether you'd want to prevent crabgrass or whether you would want to do some seeding. 2. How do we grow in seed? We're going to grow in seed by some light, frequent waterings. We don't do heavy watering when we're seeding, it's more light applications multiple times a day to keep that seed from drying out. But what also loves those light and frequent waterings is crabgrass. In the spring, if you're doing all those light waterings and you didn't get a pre-emergent down because you're doing seeding, then again, that tenacity is very, very important, or you're going to have some crabgrass problems likely come up from all those frequent waterings. 3. Seed germination is much easier in the fall because of your soil temperatures. So if you think about the way cool season lawns work, of course you have the warming that goes on in the spring. It gets very warm in the summer usually, and the grass doesn't like that too much. But coming out of the summer and going into the fall is when it's at its absolute prime time. And that's when the soil temperatures start to come down and things are really looking good at that point because it's getting back into the prime soil temperature for that grass as well. This is also a time when germination happens very easily for cool season lawns because that soil temperature is warm, it's easy to germinate at that point, and you're usually getting the perfect type of weather where it's a warm day, a little bit cooler at night. Everything works better in the fall for cool season lawns. In the spring, if you're talking about those soil temperatures, we're coming out of a frozen time if you're where I live or most cool season areas. So that soil temperature is low at that point, and until it gets warm enough to really help with your germination, that's when we're getting to a point also that the weather is getting quite warm and we're getting towards that summertime. So just be aware of that. The germination can still happen, but just be thinking about those soil temperatures. So the other thing that's difficult about spring seeding is getting it through that summer heat. And the summer heat is difficult on cool season grass no matter if it's been established for a while or if it's brand new. But specifically if it's brand new, it's going to be a little bit more challenging because there's not an established root system there that's really going to help you get through that summer stress. So you have to keep up with watering, and you cannot let the grass completely dry out or go dormant, or likely it's going to die off and you're going to have to start over. So keeping up with that watering this summer can be done, but also what you run into with our cool season grasses, if you have to do a lot of watering in the summer to keep things surviving, then you also run into some fungus. So that's a whole nother topic about preventing or what to do with fungus, but just know that that could be a side effect as well of trying to keep that grass growing in the summer heat. So what could you do if you've already seeded this spring, if you live in a little bit warmer area, or you're willing to say, I'm just going to give this a try, and if it doesn't work out, I'll fix it in the fall? Well, again, tenacity would be an important thing that you can use to try to help prevent crabgrass. 2, there's also a starter fertilizer that has that same ingredient in it that's in tenacity that you can use. So I'll link to something in the description below as far as a starter fertilizer as well. And something like humic fulvic acids that will actually help you to establish the roots a little bit quicker. Those would be something great to use alongside of your seeding as well. So again, I've done a lot of seeding in my own yard, some renovations, fixing of bare patches. Check out some of those videos if you want to see the process. Also, if you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comments section below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.